One often injured ace is on the move in a trade, supposedly. And what does that mean for the value of another often injured ace? Is he even an ace? And does he even have the most trade value on his own team right now? We'll discuss that on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started today. I don't know if we've done it this week, and our numbers have been so good for the most part that we should probably reset. I'm Jeff. I used to be a prospect and draft writer at Scout and 24/7. Scout got bought by 24/7, and 24/7 decided that they didn't like baseball. Before that, I got my start at Indians Prospect Insider, the Cleveland Fan, a few things waiting for next year. Kind of bounced around. If there was a blog, I probably appeared in it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I am the same. I'm Justin, and I have been also on every Cleveland baseball sports blog, minus like a couple over the last, 15 years. Currently at Next Year in Cleveland Newsletter and freelancer for the News Herald, the Morning Journal, covering the Guardians. I also was the former editor of Indians Baseball Insider, then Guardians Baseball Insider, back when it was also on 24/7, and then independent again.
Look, so I can be you now.
And with Prospects Live. What's that?
I can be you. I put my Post-it on my shirt. From your hoodie. Remember how people kept talking in the comments?
I'm like, oh, I'm not wearing that.
You're not wearing that, but you'll find out what this is in a bit.
Jeff went old school on us.
I went old school. I don't know. There's just something about writing things out by hand. I still kind of prefer, weirdly, when it comes to list making. I am totally someone who goes old school. So I just sat here writing. For those who have not tuned in for this week, we're doing a Guardians roster trade value rankings. And what was Justin's exact comment that we would start off with the bottom or show our bottom or something like that. And I was like, I think that would get us demonetized on YouTube.
I might do more than that. Yeah. I did not encourage how that's how Jeff took it. So this is not, even though we record this podcast after dark, this cannot be.
No, it cannot be
an after dark podcast, unfortunately. We don't really have any.
I'm going to try to adjust my light over here.
It is bright in my basement.
It's very bright on me today. I don't know what's going on. I'm really trying to not go all like full pale goth zombie like on today's show.
Yeah, so despite we don't have any rules for this, we just kind of were like, let's see how we feel about the Guardians roster and who has the most trade value on the team right now if we wanted to trade him, because
we kind of made our own rules individually apart from each other.
Yeah, this started out as a thing. We're like, all right, let's see how this works out, and then at first it was. All right, let's include guys on the 40-man roster. Okay, let's include a few prospects that might be valuable, like, Manzardo and DeLauder, who aren't on the 40-man roster. And then it expanded from there. And now I've got 48 guys. So we are not going to discuss 48 players. What I think we'll discuss is guys who from the 40-man roster did not make it on our list. And then we'll just kind of jump around and we'll give our obvious ones, and then we'll see if we have any surprise differences, and we'll see who's low on who's higher on who, and we'll tell you why we think that is. So I'll just start here, Jeff. So if we just kind of go 40 deep, I'll tell you who on the 40-man roster did not make my 40.
Okay.
I do not have Austin Hedges on my top 40.
Nor do I.
I do not have Jonathan Rodriguez on my top 40.
Nor do I.
I do not have Hunter Gaddis on my top 40.
I do. He still made it just because I think pitching depth is valuable.
Okay. I do not have Miles Straw, Ben Lively, or Alfonso Rivas on my top 40.
Well, Miles Straw is, of course, number one on my. I'm kidding. No, none of those three made it.
Number one as in last, right? Like as last?
Yeah. My rule with this was I was going to do 40 deep. So for every player here we're saying didn't make my list, that means a player not on the. Well, technically right now the roster sits at 41 because we don't know what's happening with Hedges. So it's a little weird in that regard. I have one more player who did not make it, two more who did not make it.
Okay, who's that?
40-man list. Angel Martinez and John Kenzie Noel.
Okay, that's interesting. Why no Noel and why no Martinez?
Martinez, because as we've seen over the past few years, there's with such a glut of middle infielders, they have not gotten much value for, the Owen Millers of the world. And if you're very fringe and a utility guy, what are they going to really get for you? I mean, I guess, Jose Tena didn't make mine either because of the same reason. Like, these are backups and they're purely backups. I don't see a pathway right now unless Martinez has a real big change in approach. Right now, he's following the same route as Jose Tena did. Like, Rule 5 eligible year, great year. We get hope up, and then like I just don't see they're guys who would get claimed if you cut them, but no one's trading anything for them. And John Kenzie Noel is a first base only with really poor chase rates and exit velocities. Like, yes, he can hit the ball hard, but he does not consistently hit the ball hard, and that's what teams are looking for anymore. It doesn't matter. Yeah, he has some of the best raw power in the system, maybe the best raw power in the system, but he does not consistently access it. And that's not even about making contact. That is, even when he makes contact, he makes weak contact for a guy with his strength. So, first base only guys don't have as much value in general. Like, Manzardo is my number one prospect, but he is my third prospect in terms of these rankings. When we get there, like, positional value matters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on Noel. I do disagree with you on Martinez. So here's the thing with Martinez. Coming into this year, you and I both had Martinez ranked pretty high. I think we both had him as a top 5 prospect, possibly.
5 or 6. Yeah, I mean, he was, but I was just like...
So he was still young for the level, and he did get to AAA. I know the numbers weren't pretty. And
I wrote his right up at Prospect Live and really did my deep dive on him. And I was like... I walked away at the end of that. I don't think I've ever been lower than him after I finished that write-up.
So I think I'm giving him a mulligan for the year. He had a breakout a year ago. He looked like he was going to be a bigger prospect, kind of the way that Bo Naylor had it. We gave Bo Naylor a mulligan. And I'm not saying that Martinez is as good as a prospect as that, but I do think that he deserves a mulligan. I do think he's still a valuable player. And just to be clear, we're not talking about, it'd be good in a package. Maybe he's a good third or fourth, piece in a trade package or whatever, how this works out. No, this is just individual trade value we're talking about here. And I have him
just
on
looking
my top
at the
40.
profile with the numbers. Like, he was a late cut. It basically came down to him or Alaman for that 40th spot. And I just went with feeling like Alaman has a little more of a ceiling here.
I had Martinez much higher. Actually, I had him at 29th. I have Noel at 36. He barely made it. So here's the back end. I'm not going to show back end, but I'm going to tell you my back. I'll tell you about my backside. So I have Will Dion at 41. He just missed.
Oh, I have 40. Him significantly higher.
Okay. Karinchak made my 40. He's at 40.
He's higher for 30. Me.
I have Tane at 39 just because I know he can play short. He can play multiple positions. I think you can get something for him. I'm not saying it's a lot, but he's got he's got about as much value.
Mark Matthias path.
Yeah, I have Curry at 38. I have Morgan at 30. I have Morgan at 37. Then I had Noel at 36. So I had Noel on there, but I mean, he barely just made it for me. And I all the same points stand. He is a first base only guy. You could probably convince some team who's really also power hungry to figure out if they like him more than Cleveland. I don't know. But the point is, I don't think his value, neither of us think his value is very high. Let's go to the top then.
Just to compare, to give you an idea of we're already very different. Like, for me, it was Alaman at 40, 39 was Cade Smith, 38 was Gaddis, 37 was Tim Herron.
Okay. Cade Smith did not make my 40, by the way. He's at 43 for me. Just below Hedges. So
he was. I put him in as a potential, reliever. So it's 30. That's 36 was Brito, which is going to surprise people. But I think the lack of defensive position and the lack of a power or carrying tool makes him very he's more valuable to the Guardians than probably most baseball teams. Now, is he going to be a top 5 prospect? Yes, but I think what we saw when they were able to acquire him, at the relative cost it's a profile that for the rest of the league is not as fashionable. And at 35, Andrew Walters, just because, I mean, I only saw the fastball a year ago. People are really high on the slider, I believe, right? That's the pitch that I'm reading much more about that I didn't see. So he might end up being the guy that I regret having so low. And then I had 34 was Divison de los Santos. I just, if the swing changes, even if the swing changes have made him significantly better, with that swing change, he was still walking under 3% of the time, which just doesn't translate. But his power could pass Noel's. So I have him kind of in that Noel range on your list.
Yeah, De Los Santos was 32 for me. And then I have Aleman just ahead of Walters, only because I've seen Aleman do it at AA. We haven't seen Walters do it in the majors yet, or the minors yet. Let's come back and let's talk about the top of our order of our trade value rankings. We'll get into Bieber and the Glasnow trade and how that affects his market as part of this and more. So stick with us. There's no money line on FanDuel for a Shane Bieber trade. Probably wasn't one for Tyler Glasnow trade. But there are some hot offers for you if you are a new FanDuel customer on Moneyline Bet. So right now, if you're a new customer with FanDuel, you bet $5 on a Moneyline bet and your team wins. Guess what? You get $150 in bonus bets. $150 if your team wins if you're a new customer, and throw down a $5 Moneyline bet. So if you're thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get in on the action. Maybe you're not a Moneyline person. I am personally not a Moneyline person. I can tell you I will be hitting up those spreads and the player props and the over-unders on bowl pick'em season for sure when that comes up for college football. So if that's your thing, I'm in. Hey, if you're in a league for any of that stuff, invite me. I'm down to get into a bowl.
What you should bet on, if you can bet on it, is the Columbus Blue Jackets blowing third quarter leads. If you can bet on something.
I don't think that's part of FanDuel's options, but there are spreads, there are player props, there are over-unders, and much, much more. We'll take a look at those Guardians AL Central odds or even World Series odds maybe in the new year after we see a few things happen. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon this NFL season to get this offer. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, so the top of our trade value rankings. I'm gonna make a bet. If I was betting on FanDuel, Jeff, I would bet that our number ones are the same. How much money would I win if I said Tanner Bybee is your number one trade value on the Guardians?
Yes, it was funny. Yesterday, I did it'll populate in the feed next week. When we do these crossovers, it gives us a chance to give you guys videos even when we're giving ourselves the needed breaks. And he asked, like, well, would you guys trade Bybee? I'm like, no. Like, that was the thing, like discussing trades. It's like,
was that a serious question?
Yes. Because everyone thinks that,
sure, Bybee for Wyatt Langford. Call it in. Bye.
No,
Bye.
I don't know if I would do that. Like, Langford isn't proven. Like, call
That's
me
true.
crazy.
That's
I wouldn't
fair.
do that. I would say no. Maybe Evan Carter I would consider after his debut, but even then I don't know. Like, Bybee should be untouchable. He just had the best rookie season, depending on where you look, since Herb Score.
Yeah.
And it's unmatched. It was, an incomplete year, but he was absolutely fantastic. You've got the pitch mix, you've got durability. There's really no big negative there. Any smart team is going to view him as the top value player. And some behind the scenes, Justin was like, I bet we have the same top two. He goes, I bet we have the same top three. And I'm like, actually, I'm going to flip my 2 and 3.
So I don't know if we have the same order, the top three, but I'll bet you we have the top 3 players. So
okay,
my two and 3 are Bo Naylor and Gavin Williams.
Yes.
In that order.
Bo Naylor, then Gavin Williams.
Yes.
Yeah. At post flip, I had the same order.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we had the same 2-3, but that was easy. Bo Naylor, obviously up and coming catcher, offensive catcher. It's left-handed.
Hard to find.
Very hard to find under club control. I think a team would give up a lot. Now they're going to trade him, but I'm just saying that makes him the second most valuable trade ass on this team. Gavin Williams, same thing. This is where it gets interesting because, as you've noticed, neither of us have talked about Shane Bieber. We haven't talked about Jose Ramirez. We haven't talked about Emmanuel Clase. We haven't talked about Andres Jimenez. All guys that have locked-in contracts, right, that are good players. So I actually have Clase fourth because that contract is so team-friendly. And
all the debates, as always, you and I never agree.
Never agree. That was easy. I do not. This maybe my number 5 is a surprise. I have Logan Allen at 5.
Oh, I have Logan Allen at 9. So I have Tristan McKenzie at 5.
I have McKenzie a lot lower.
Here's he missed this last year because of injury, and I of all people have had injury concerns for him for a while. But what he has shown at peak is higher than what I think Logan Allen will be at peak. And he has a longer track record. And I think that the ceiling there, even with less years of control, it's still 3, 4. I mean, he's not even arbitration eligible, right? So it's 4 years of control left.
McKenzie is next year will be his first arbitration year.
You know, there's still a lot of control, and he has shown more. So for me, McKenzie is my 5 because he has just shown a higher ceiling. So in spite of the injury, in spite of the year, in spite of my own injury concerns, I think ceiling and the chance to potentially, I mean, he has flashed number 1 I'd say more of a number 2, but I think he has a better chance of being a 2-3, whereas Logan Allen's probably more of a 4.
Yeah, it's just the health for me and then the club control. Like Logan Allen has a better track record health-wise. I know it's short, and the club control, I think, to me also kind of bakes some of that in, and there's a little bit less risk, even if you're getting a lower upside. But I don't know. A lot of teams, maybe you're right. Teams don't trade for safety. They make trades. Yeah. Like look at the Tyler Glasnow trade. That is not a safe trade for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are getting the best player in that trade, but it is by no means a safe trade because Glasnow could be on the injured list by June.
He's only pitched 100 innings twice in his career. And
last year was his career high at 120.
Yeah, 120. I mean, he's been awesome when he pitches. You're getting massive ceilings. He's always been effective. Since Tampa fixed him, he's always been an effective starter. But you just can't count on health. And that's again, there's a classic example of why I'm afraid of very tall pitchers, because health and mechanics.
You're afraid of short. You're heightest and you're heightest in both ways. You're afraid of tall pitchers, but you're also afraid of short pitchers.
To lesser degrees. Like I'm more afraid of short position players. A short king pitcher works better for me. No, and that's a funny thing for a long time. Like if you go back and look at some of my early writings at Indians Prospect Insider, I wrote, well, you probably can't find him anymore, but like I was all about like Brendan Finnegan, and like I was like Marcus Stroman was someone I was advocating. Yeah. Like I was the one saying that, and the Guardians agreed with me at the time, like that was a market inefficiency, that the league was slow to adjust. And if you think about it, I mean, Paul Skeens is kind of big, but like Jack Leiters and Casey Mize aren't the biggest guys. So the league is definitely kind of started. It took a while, but the league is now shifting that way.
Yeah. Okay, so I finally have Jose Ramirez at 6 on my list. The only reason he's not higher is because I think we're both going to agree here. You know, he is 31. He is on the downside slope of his career. And I don't know how much it really matters because obviously he asked for the no trade clause. Cleveland has never given anybody any sort of no trade clause, like even partial, nothing. He asked for it because he wanted to stay. He wanted control over where he might, if he ever did go anywhere, I guess. But the no trade clause, I feel like, hurts his value a little because then he also can pick where he wants to go. Should there be some disaster that ever happens where Cleveland's even discussing this trade? Like, you know, let's be clear. There should never be a reason for Cleveland to trade him at all unless he is demanding it, in which case you're screwed.
Or he commits a crime. Like,
well, okay, let's take that off the board. But I think that just hurts him a little bit because then your market is limited if there were a hypothetical trade because he can decide where he wants to go, which hurts his value.
So at Cleveland. 6, I am going to have to agree with you and have Jose Ramirez because basically for me, it is, you know, there is some signs of decline, and any player with an extension into their mid to late 30s, it has a little bit less value. Even if it is a team friendly extension, it's a pretty team friendly one, but there is still, you know, we've seen some erraticness with his throwing and things like that. It's like, if he can't play third, I don't know where he plays. So there's also that concern moving forward.
Yeah.
No, that's why you don't give Josh Naylor an extension, because Jose Ramirez might have to be your DH in by the time Naylor's contract is up.
That's a good point. We'll talk about where I have Josh Naylor not too far, but here's my next grouping. I think this is an interesting grouping. I have not mentioned Bieber and McKenzie yet. So here's my next grouping. I'll tell you. I have Andres Gimenez just behind Jose because he does. Even though he has a high contract, he is still a great defender.
He's at 10 short. Because of that contract. The end years of that could be a net negative to a team.
He's just still so young. The defense
it's not
still
age,
so
it's just the cost. Like if his bat, listen, this year was probably he was too bad. The year before he was too good. He's probably somewhere baked in the middle. But if he doesn't rebound, those late years of that contract are going to be an albatross.
Possibly.
That's why he was 10th for me.
So after that, this is where it gets interesting. I have Kyle Manzardo at 8, and let me give my next couple before we get to the break. I have Manzardo. I have Stephen Kwan at 9, and then I have Josh Naylor. That's my top 10.
Okay, so mine after Jose Ramirez, I have Quan 7 due to control, and every team in baseball is looking for outfielders, and he is at
What is
worst
he a left
average.
fielder only? Because that makes him a little bit less valuable if he can only play left.
It does, but he's also such an elite defender. It also brings back a little bit of value on that. Like, if he could play center, he might be ahead of J Ram on my rankings. But even if he is just
sure.
Even if it's just an elite defender in left and a league average bat, that's still 7th with his years of control because you can't find outfielders. Every team needs them. As much as people want to say that outfielders are easy to find,
But
they're
he's
not
right-handed and he doesn't hit 20 home runs.
Josh Naylor's 8th, and that's only comes down to a year and a half of control and health and build concerns. At 9 was Logan Allen for me. The elder. I think he still has that much. I'm kidding. No, this is Logan Allen, the younger. We've already talked about him. And then I have Andres Jimenez at 10. And as I've already discussed, I think that comes down to just the isn't like the final few years, like $20 million. Like that could be a lot of money if he is, especially if he can't get it back. And I know we're going to run to break. So I'll say this. My number 11, I think is going to be shocking, but I'll discuss the why. I think I'm going to get people who hate number 11. So I'm just going to say that now. That is the cut to break. You're going to want to come back because I'm going off board.
I don't think we have the same number 11, so this should be interesting. Nope. Stay tuned for more. All right, let me give you my number 11 real quick then, since you're off the board, and this is going to be interesting. This is where I put Shane Bieber. I have Bieber ahead of McKenzie only because Bieber has a better track record of health. I know he hasn't pitched much the last 3 years, but even 2022, he was really good. And I think, I don't know, maybe I should have put McKenzie ahead of Bieber. I don't know. The years are going to, okay, you know what? Never mind. I'm switching on the fly. I'm calling an audible live on the show. I'm putting McKenzie 11 and Bieber 12 because of the club control, even though McKenzie has as much of a injury checkered history as Bieber now does. So that's my 11 and 12. Who's your 11?
So I will say Bieber is 13 for me. So this is where people are gonna kind of come at me. I have Sam Henches at 11.
And I can agree with this because 11 seems high to me, but let me say, cheap relief pitching is hard to find, and he's a left-hander.
He's a lefty. He brings it. The home run rate was not great last year, but when you look at like the advanced,
could be
he was 85th percentile in barrels. Guys could not, put the barrel of the ball on him. His ground ball rate was 95th percentile. So even when guys do make contact, it's on the ground. He's not getting the ball knocked out. His fastball is breaking ball. If he had been healthy all year, you think about what he did towards the end of 22 and 23. He's the number 2 reliever they have, and I think he would close for 9-10 teams in baseball. I think he is a closer in training, a closer in waiting. And I think that he is 11 because, you got multiple years of team control, and he's a closer that's only not closing because they have one of the top 5 closers in baseball. So there's just always value in that. And as a lefty with his velocity, I think he's extremely valuable. So to compare, at 12, I have DeLauder. He's not my top prospect, but it's positional value. Outfield, again, every team has been looking for outfield all offseason. It is maybe the hardest position to fill for teams because you need 3 good ones. And that puts him higher than Manzardo. I have Bieber at 13. And, let's talk
about Bieber real quick.
Just looking at the Glass Now trade, I just want to pull, I texted this to you earlier. I want to pull it up. So if you looked at what Straw is owed for Margot is much better than Straw, but he is owed $12 million. So the net cost was $37 million when you look at buyouts for the Dodgers to get Glasnow and Margot, because they took Margot. Margot was going to start for them.
Owed 10, by the way. I think it's 12.
10, but 10 with a $2 million buyout.
Mutual option next year. Well,
$2 million buyout.
Yeah, okay, so you're right. It's 12. You're right. Okay.
12. So that's what I did. Yeah, I double checked that. So that is why that's there. So listen, he's a fine starter, but that's paid as a plus starter. That's, he's a borderline. He's kind of fringe. So if Cleveland wanted to do let's say Straw, who's not as good as Margot and Bieber, that would be, when you look at options and all that, that's $32.5 million. So it's only a $5 million difference. Yes, Glasnow does not have the innings count Bieber has put up, but Glasnow has been more effective recently. He's got a higher ceiling. Bieber, 2 of the last 3 years, this is Glasnow's arguably his best season because he threw the most innings. This is arguably Bieber's worst season because he couldn't miss. He was striking out guys at the same rate as Kyle Gibson before his injury. And I appreciate one of our everydayers in the comments. He was like, he ended strong, but one start does not change a whole year of looking terrible. I just think his value is very limited. Teams don't want to trade for guys with his injury history. And we could say that McKenzie has had, a checkered one, but that's 2 of the last 3 years missing significant time for Bieber. And
And I think if you look down this past year,
and honestly, if Cleveland was able to convince the Dodgers, and I'm not even sure you could if you're going to take Bieber, then you also take Straw. They're not getting Ryan Peppa Pig, or I can't say Pepio.
Peppa Pig.
Yeah, Peppa Pig. Mommy Pig, Daddy Pig.
I don't have kids right now. That reference.
Yeah. I got 2 under 2, 1 6, 1's 2, so I know this quite well. But they're not getting him. Maybe they get Johnny DeLuca, who could be a fringe starter, but I don't even know what my thought was. You might get less than that. Like that's the weird situation. And like,
okay, what about straight up? So I think this is what I think. I think that the Glasnow trade, because they included Margot's money, it knocked down the trade. If they would have just given up Glasnow straight up for whatever, I think the Rays would have gotten more back, but they did dump Margot's salary a little bit to them. I think that does.
It's kind of like the Carlos Carrasco situation, where it's like, that probably was.
I think Carrasco had a little more value at the time.
He did, but because of all the owed money, I think it was kind of one of those situations where it's almost like free to go home if anyone would take him.
And that was pre-COVID, so I don't know. That was interesting. No, it was post-COVID. I'm sorry, it was post-COVID. So that also makes things a little bit trickier for Cleveland too, because it was a post-COVID season. But do you think that, okay, let's take Margot. I would say Margot's inclusion in the trade to the Dodgers waters Glasnow's value in a trade down enough to where you are looking at the Bieber market. So maybe it is a back end starter.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like Peppa Pig, because that's what I'm going to just stick to now because I'm,
or Ryan Pepio, man. What did he do to deserve that?
Listen, I think you and I were debating back end starter or just a good reliever. And then they got
I think DeLuca could be a average starter in a corner because he has enough pull side power. I don't know if it's going to be.
It's very fringe. Like
at the very worst, he is like a Jordan Luplow at the very worst.
Yes. So
and I don't know if that's your market for Bieber. I don't know. Do you like that? I don't.
No.
I don't think it's
no a guy who is a 5th starter and or good reliever because for a team that didn't have him start the last 2 years all that often because he had health issues and because they didn't trust him, even though they desperately needed starters, they did not trust him enough to be a consistent starter for them. They went a lot of other places over him, and a team that desperatly needed outfielders a year ago and did not go to do like these are 2 guys that should have
Hayward and Trace Thompson.
Instead of getting help from these players, they decided to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And then
I will say, I saw DeLuca's first game in high A, and he popped Daniel Espino fastball over the wall in his first at bat. And the guy had just gotten to the field like a couple hours ago. So I know DeLuca can hit velocity. I know he can hit lefties. He had a curve at a Doug Nikhazy curveball. Let's try to get through a few more names here real quick. So I have Bieber 12. Just go ahead. Let me ask you where you have these guys at. I'm going to agree with your point on Henches. I have Henches 16 only because he is a reliever.
That's where I have Espino.
I have Espino at 14, so it's not a huge bump.
Yeah.
I also have Steven 17 right behind Henches.
I have him 18
because he is a reliever with a friendly contract.
Mm-hmm.
You encouraged me to put Welbin Francisca on your list. I put him at 21. He is sandwiched between Valera and Arias for me.
20 for me. Arias is 19. 21 is Curry because I thought he showed some signs he could be a starter. So that's why I was much higher than him.
What do you have Scott Barlow, just out of curiosity? Because Cleveland just took on all that money.
So, I'll say this.
I don't know what to do with him.
My 2 controversial ones, we have touched on all of my teens except for 14 and 15. I have Manzardo at 15 because of positional value. And 14, I have Joey Cantillo, who
I can't tell 15. So
when you just look at his data, he has. I mean, he might be the guy. Like if they trade Bieber this offseason, to me that is a sure sign that they believe in Cantillo. I think that means he's up sooner than later. I have Barlow. Where do I have 27? Will Dion's at 26. Freeman
I have Barlow
28.
At 20. I feel like Barlow's going to be. It depends on the year on the year he has.
Yeah,
I believe that he's going to have a good year, which could make him a valuable trade asset in the July if Cleveland's not in it. Which hopefully
some other highlights. Valera at 22. Some people might still buy in him. He was a
21 for me,
big prospect, and then
Ralphie 24 for me.
Ralphie 24. Oh, see, I had him 31. I had Cody Morris at 23. Again, maybe treating last year like a mulligan. Brendan at 24. Like his outs above average in right field were phenomenal. It's like he defensively, he could be just a strong defensive backup.
I had Brito at 19, by the way, behind Rocchio at 18, just because, like you said, defensive value, even though I do like Brito.
Where did I end up with? I had Rocchio at 17. That was the last guy in my teens. And then I had 99 at 32. I was higher on him just because maybe you think you can get him back. Maybe there's that thing where he has had some high points, so you're kind of maybe hoping. But
which non-Bieber player on your list is most likely to be traded? Let's end with that. Which we all I don't know. I'm still 50-50 on Bieber right now, but who on your list outside of Bieber is most likely to be traded?
I kind of think like Rocchio. Because if they're going to commit to Arias and you still have Freeman and you got Brito coming up, you got to trade one of these infielders. And there are teams like the Giants who could use an infielder. Like Luciano is not a shortstop. Like I read that today with Keith Law, and I agree with him. So I think one of these infielders. So for me, I go with Rocchio because he's maybe the one that has the most. I have him as having the most value.
I have George Valera as my most likely to be traded. I think that's a profile they are ready to move on from. I said that was my bold prediction coming into the offseason. I'm sticking with it. Okay. We still have more episodes to do on stuff we want to talk about. We'll be back in your feeds on Monday morning. Let's make a deal with other teams. Let's talk about trades. And we have positional reviews coming up. Shortstop, outfield, starting pitching, relief pitching. Will Shane Bieber be part of that list? Well, he will because he pitched here in 2023. So there is that. Yeah. Stay tuned next week.
Thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate every one of our everydayers who are joining us in the comments and having some fun with us at this time. Thank you all, and go Guardians, go.